cheating wife, trapped by husband, pregnant with the third man's child, and the bitter ending. Her smug smirk, the late-night texts, the whispered phone calls. For 3 agonizing months, I suspected my wife, Claire, was cheating. The guilt, suspicion, and anger churned in my gut, almost causing me to lose control of my truck. I drove 2 hours along I-95, pushing hard, straight toward Baltimore, determined to find answers. My destination, room 214 at the Marriott, where Claire was attending a 3-day insurance conference. What I found there would not only shatter my world, but ignite a chilling, calculated plan for revenge that would utterly transform our lives. No more guessing, no more sleepless nights imagining every horrible scenario. Tonight, I would know the truth, and if she was indeed a traitor, I would know exactly how to proceed. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal, the slow burn of suspicion, or the crushing weight of a collapsing marriage, then this story is for you. Hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell if you want to dive deep into real-life dramas that expose the darkest corners of human relationships. Because today we're unraveling a tale of infidelity, meticulous revenge, and the surprising path to a new beginning. My name is Adam Taylor, a man whose life, just a few months ago, felt solid, predictable, safe. Claire and I had been married for 14 years, practically since high school. Young, impulsive, hopelessly in love, that's how we started. We had 2 amazing kids, Sarah, 12, and Jake, 10, who were the center of our universe. But time, as they say, changes everything. Love, I learned, can rot from the inside out if someone decides they deserve more than what they have at home. And that's what I suspected Claire had done. For the past 3 months, every time she had one of these work events, something felt profoundly off. She'd come home late, smelling faintly of an unfamiliar cologne, acting aloof, almost guarded. She'd check her phone at all hours, a satisfied, almost secretive little smirk playing on her lips, a look I'd never seen before. The bright, cheerful woman whose enthusiasm alone could fill a room had vanished, replaced by a stranger. That sparkle in her eyes, once so vibrant, had gone cold. She still had her eye-catching figure, those curves that once turned my head so fast I nearly got whiplash when we were teenagers, and long brown hair that caught sunlight like polished bronze. Yet some intangible part of her seemed locked away, as if she had secrets sizzling behind her eyes, secrets that were slowly poisoning our life together. The agonizing doubts had consumed me. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My mind was a whirlwind of suspicion and anger, constantly imagining the worst. So on that fateful evening, I was determined to put an end to it. I needed to walk right up to room 214, where she was staying for that so-called conference, and see for myself whether our 14-year marriage was salvageable or a sinking ship. In my bleaker moments, I even thought that if I caught her in the act with someone else, at least I'd know how to proceed. No more guessing, no more tossing and turning at night. Just a brutal, undeniable truth. I arrived at the Marriott just after 5 o'clock in the evening. The giant revolving doors spun me into a world of gleaming opulence. A polished lobby, marble floors, soft, expensive lighting. Everything looked plush and unassailable, the kind of grand setting that charges too much for parking and too little for honesty. I half expected a security guard to stop me, to question my presence. But that's the funny thing about these upscale hotels. You can wander in unchallenged if you look confident enough, if you carry yourself with an air of belonging. I approached the front desk, my heart thudding a relentless rhythm against my ribs. A fresh-faced clerk in a crisp, dark uniform asked if he could help. Adam Taylor, I introduced myself, my voice, to my own surprise, coming out calm and even. I offered my ID and explained that I was there to see my wife, Claire Taylor, who was attending an insurance conference in room 214. I added, with practiced composure, that she'd left a key for me. The clerk gave me a quick once-over, typed a few things into his computer, and then, to my astonishment, smiled. "Here you are, Mr. Taylor," he said, sliding a key card across the counter. "Enjoy your stay." My heart pounded with every single step toward the elevator. The overhead lights felt painfully bright, exposing every bead of sweat on my palms. I tried to tell myself I was ready for whatever I'd find, but that was a lie, a gut-wrenching, cowardly lie. I rode the elevator to the second floor, the ascent feeling impossibly slow, like a torturous climb to an inevitable cliff edge. I walked down the long, quiet hallway with its worn red carpet, the silence amplifying the frantic beat of my pulse. I paused in front of door 214, my hand trembling slightly as I slid the key into the lock. The door beeped green, a chilling little confirmation of entry. I opened it, slow and quiet, bracing myself for the sight that would either validate my fears or relieve my torment. Claire sat at the small desk in the corner of the room, flipping through a stack of paperwork, utterly oblivious to my presence. She looked up, her eyes widening in surprise. "Adam, you scared me," she exclaimed, a faint blush rising to her cheeks. I forced a grin, hoping my voice sounded casual, betraying none of the turmoil raging inside me. "Figured I'd surprise you. Brought my suit so we could go out for dinner." She blinked, and for a split second I thought I saw a flicker of guilt, a shadow crossing her features. Then, a bright, almost overly enthusiastic smile spread across her face. "That's so sweet. I didn't expect you here." She stood up, brushed imaginary lint off her blouse, and approached me with open arms. I half expected her to block my path, to keep me from entering further, but she didn't. She kissed me, pressing those familiar lips against mine, a practiced intimacy that made my stomach twist. This was the same mouth I'd fantasized about punishing, about silencing, if I discovered she was a traitor. But she seemed genuinely relieved, even happy to see me. "Stay the night," she said brightly, her voice light and airy. "They gave me a decent room." "You can help me relax after these stuffy seminars, darling." "Sure," I said, playing along, forcing a weak smile. "I could use a break." She kissed me once more, her fingers grazing my shoulders, a touch that once would have thrilled me, now felt like a brand. Then she stepped back. "Let me grab a quick shower, then we can figure out dinner plans, okay?" Her tone was so airy, so casual, so disarmingly normal, that for a moment I could feel my earlier suspicions begin to wither. Maybe, just maybe, I was paranoid. Or maybe, a darker thought intruded. She was simply a far better actress than I realized. She sauntered into the bathroom, humming a tuneless little melody, confident as anything. I heard the water start running, the hiss from the showerhead filling the silence. I kicked off my shoes and looked around the room. It was neat, almost sterile. No sign of a second guest, at least not on the surface. I exhaled slowly, a shaky breath. Maybe she was telling the truth after all. My head pounded from the drive, from the emotional whiplash. I'd driven 2 hours to find out the truth, and so far everything looked normal. But I couldn't let it go. Not yet. The seed of doubt had taken too deep a root. On the dresser, I spotted her big toiletry bag. I meandered over, telling myself I was just looking for aspirin, for something to quell the throbbing in my temples. But we both know that was a lie. I was looking for evidence. When I unzipped it, I found the usual stuff. Makeup, hairpins, a small comb, a bottle of expensive perfume. Then I spotted them. A small, discreet pack of 6 condoms tucked beneath a hairbrush. My heart turned to ice, shattering into a million frozen pieces. After Jake was born, Claire had gone on birth control pills, which messed her up emotionally. So I got a vasectomy. We never needed protection again. We hadn't used condoms in over a decade, but here they were. I stared at them, my hand shaking uncontrollably. There was only one reason for her to keep them in her bag. She was seeing someone. She was having sex with him. And that, in that quiet, sterile hotel room, was the final, brutal nail in the coffin of my trust. Now, what does a betrayed husband do in that moment? Some would confront her, screaming accusations, demanding answers. Some would simply walk out, letting the silence speak volumes. Me, I saw red. A cold, quiet, calculating red. I rummaged further in the bag and found a small safety pin, its sharp point glinting innocently. My hand, though numb, was steady. I poked tiny, almost invisible holes in each condom. Quick, precise stabs, right through the center, ensuring their failure. Then I placed them carefully back into her bag, exactly as I had found them. Was it rational? Probably not. Was it ethical? Absolutely not. But it felt like a quiet, insidious revenge. If she dared to use them with her side piece, maybe, just maybe, she'd reap the consequences. I slipped the safety pin into my pocket, a cold, hard reminder of my silent act of defiance. My phone sat on the side table. I dialed my buddy Rob, a guy so loyal he'd bury a body for me if I asked. "Hey," I said in a low, tight voice. "I need a favor. Call me in an hour. Make up some emergency I can't ignore. A burst pipe at the school. Something urgent that'll drag me back home." Rob, bless his unquestioning loyalty, agreed without a single question. By the time Claire finished showering, my plan was set. I'd find a reason to bail before bedtime, give myself space to process everything, to figure out my next, more devastating move. Claire emerged, hair damp, wrapped only in a fluffy white hotel towel. She shot me a sultry glance, a practiced seductiveness that now felt utterly repellent. "Hey, handsome. You look tense." I forced a weak chuckle. The drive wore me out. She sat beside me on the edge of the bed, rubbed my thigh, her touch sending shivers of disgust through me. "Let me make it better," she whispered, leaning in for a kiss, the steam from her skin mixing with my shallow, controlled breath. A stronger, more emotionally stable man might have shoved her away, screamed at her, ended it right there. But I felt a twisted desire, a perverse curiosity. Anger and betrayal can be potent fuel. So, I let her have her moment. We were intimate, in that sterile, air-conditioned room, but my mind was screaming the entire time. Every moan she made, every breath she took felt tainted, an echo of her deceit. I wanted to see if she'd slip, if she'd mention anything, any name, any detail, but she didn't. She pretended our moment was genuine, real, passionate, a sickening performance. Afterward, we dressed and headed downstairs to the hotel restaurant. She seemed in a surprisingly good mood, almost giddy. She ordered a small filet mignon and a glass of rosé. I got a heavy steak and a double whiskey, anything to drown the roaring inferno in my gut. "So," I said, forcing a calm I didn't feel, "enjoying the conference?" She shrugged, a dismissive gesture. "It's all right. Insurance seminars are dull, but they're necessary. Sometimes I wonder why you never ask about them." Her arrogance bled through, a thinly veiled accusation that I didn't care about her professional life. Funny, I thought, considering how invested I suddenly am. We chatted about the kids, about next month's mortgage payment, about random, mundane details that once formed the comfortable fabric of our life together. The tension in my shoulders wouldn't leave, a physical manifestation of the betrayal. Then Rob called, right on cue. I stepped away from the table, feigning distress. "Hey, Rob, yeah? A burst pipe in the school basement?" I made sure to sound suitably upset, worried. "Sure, I'll head back right now." I gave it 2 minutes, enough to look legitimate, then ended the call. I returned to find Claire half smiling, half annoyed. Something wrong? I laid out the story. The plumbing issues at the school, me being the only one who could handle it, the impending disaster if I didn't fix it. She feigned disappointment. Really? Tonight, Adam? Come on, we just got here. I know, believe me, I don't want to bail, I said, giving her the best sad face I could muster. But if I don't fix it, they'll have to shut down classes tomorrow. You know how important that is. She sighed, pushing her plate away, the feigned disappointment quickly replaced by a barely concealed relief. Fine, go be the hero, plumber. She didn't press the issue, didn't argue further, which told me everything I needed to know. She'd probably celebrate my exit, call her lover, break out those condoms. Well, the perforated ones. We took the elevator back up to her floor. As the doors opened, another guest stepped out, a tall man with a confident grin. He greeted Claire like they were old buddies, an easy familiarity that made my blood run cold. "Claire," he exclaimed, then extended his hand to me. "You must be Adam. I'm Tom Bradley. I work with your wife." I studied his face, late 30s, perfectly coiffed hair, strong jaw, an expensive watch flashing on his wrist. He smiled like the world owed him a favor. The intensity in Claire's eyes, the subtle shift in her posture, told me this was no stranger. This was the man who held my wife's secrets. This was Tom Bradley. "Tom," I repeated, forcing a handshake, my grip tight. "Nice to meet you." He stepped off, heading down the hall, presumably to his own room. My nostrils flared. My mind whirled with fantasies about slamming him against the wall, strangling the life out of him. But I had to bide my time. I walked Claire back to her room, said goodbye, and told her I'd call in the morning. Her expression was an unsettling mix of relief and something else. Maybe fear, maybe excitement, a hint of something illicit simmering beneath the surface. I left, hopped in my truck, and made the lonely, silent drive home. As the city lights faded behind me and the darkness of the highway enveloped my car, I wondered if I was strong enough to see this through. The wife I once adored had become a lying cheat, and I had no real evidence to nail her, except for the rubber. Nobody would believe me if I cried infidelity based on a pack of condoms. I needed proof. Cold, hard, undeniable proof to show the world, and her, that she was a manipulative liar. 2 days later, Claire returned home. She was bright, almost unnervingly smug, purring about how exhausting the conference had been. Not once did she mention Tom or apologize for anything. She planted a quick, dismissive kiss on my cheek, then spent the rest of the evening fussing around the kitchen as if we were perfectly fine. I had to hold it together to maintain the facade, but inside, fury boiled, a slow, relentless burn. That Saturday, Claire's company, Liberty Insurance, hosted their annual family picnic. They did it every summer, renting out a big park with carnival rides, balloon stands, cotton candy, and everything in between. Sarah and Jake were ecstatic to go. I, on the other hand, dreaded it. The idea of being around Claire's colleagues, of seeing Tom swagger around with his confident smirk, turned my stomach. Still, I plastered a convincing smile on my face for the kids' sake. We piled into the car and drove out to the park. Claire wore a tight V-neck blouse and skinny jeans that showcased her figure. She had practically preened in front of the mirror that morning, flipping her hair, applying lip gloss with a smug, self-satisfied flourish. "You look nice," I said, my voice wooden, devoid of genuine admiration. "Thanks," she replied, tossing her hair over her shoulder. Could have used a compliment without sounding so stiff. I let it slide, allowing the subtle barb to pass, storing it away for later. We arrived, signed in at the welcome booth, and grabbed some freebie tote bags. Immediately, Claire was swallowed up by a circle of coworkers, laughing too loudly at their inane jokes, while I hovered awkwardly at the edge with the kids. I saw Tom strolling around, shaking hands, looking every inch the charismatic opportunist, the smooth-talking corporate shark. He caught my eye, flashed a brief, almost arrogant nod, and moved on. My blood simmered. Within minutes, a woman I didn't recognize approached me. "Hey," she said softly, her voice carrying a hint of weariness beneath its polite tone. She was tall, with striking auburn hair and intelligent blue eyes that sparkled with quick wit. She wore a crisp white blouse and slacks that accentuated her graceful figure. "You're Claire's husband, right?" "Adam Taylor?" "I am," I said, measuring her expression, a strange sense of anticipation building in my chest. "And you are?" "Janet Bradley," she replied, her gaze steady. "Tom's wife." My eyebrows rose, a slow, deliberate movement. Tom's wife. So here she stood, the unsuspecting, or perhaps all too suspecting, spouse of the man I now knew was sleeping with Claire. I tried not to stare, tried to keep my expression neutral. She was gorgeous, carrying herself with the poise of someone who usually turns heads, but there was a deep sadness etched around her eyes. We made small talk, discussing the unusually warm weather, the turnout at the picnic, the kids' excitement over the carnival rides. Then, as we drifted away from the main crowd, her voice lowered barely above a whisper. "Look," she said, her eyes flicking over my shoulder as if confirming no one was listening. "I know about Claire and Tom." "I've known for a couple of months." I froze, the cotton candy in my hand suddenly feeling like sawdust. My stomach churned, a violent lurch. "You knew?" She gave a quick, grim nod, her gaze meeting mine, filled with a shared pain. "I've tried everything to get Tom to stop. He denies it when I confront him, twists everything around. I even hired a private investigator." That little revelation hit me like a jolt of electricity, a powerful shockwave. "Then you must have photos. Proof?" I asked, my voice tight with a desperate urgency. She confirmed with a grim, knowing smile. "I do. Enough to make a strong case in a divorce. My lawyer wants me to gather statements from people who can testify, maybe even from Claire, but it seems like she's in too deep, too lost in her own delusion." I nodded, feeling both profoundly relieved and deeply sick. Relieved because I wasn't losing my mind, wasn't just a paranoid husband imagining things. Claire really was having an affair. Sick because it meant our 14-year marriage, our family, our entire life, was in freefall, already shattered beyond repair. Janet asked if I wanted to share resources, evidence, testimonies, anything that could strengthen both our cases if we ended up divorcing. "Yes," I said without hesitation, the word escaping my lips like a desperate plea. She suggested we meet the next day at her house, 26 Hemlock Avenue, Cresmont, since Tom would be out golfing, a carefully chosen detail. We exchanged contact information, a silent pact formed between two strangers, united by a common betrayal. Then we drifted back to the main crowd, slipping in as if nothing had happened, as if our world hadn't just been turned upside down. Claire was too busy enthralling her colleagues, throwing her head back in a theatrical laugh whenever Tom made a witty remark. Meanwhile, Tom kept an arm's length from Janet, who wore an expression of studied neutrality. The tension in the air, for those who knew, was stifling, almost unbearable. The next morning I told Claire I had a few errands to run. She barely gave me a second glance, casually mentioning she'd be out shopping with a friend. Perfect. I dropped the kids at my parents' house, inventing a story about a surprise outing for them, and then drove across town to Hemlock Avenue. The street was lined with cozy houses, each with well-kept lawns and colorful flower beds. Janet's place stood at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, bright with rose bushes and a neat porch. She opened the door, wearing jeans and a comfortable sweater, her auburn hair tied back in a casual ponytail. "Morning, Adam," she said with a weary smile, ushering me in. The interior was tastefully decorated, all warm colors and subtle lighting, creating an inviting, homely atmosphere. She guided me to her den, a small private room where a computer monitor was set up on a small table. The screen displayed a grainy, almost cheap-looking motel room with a single bed, empty at the moment. Janet gestured for me to sit. "I have a private investigator on retainer," she explained, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. "He set up hidden cameras. Tom, consistent with his patterns, books that room every time he golfs." Her voice choked slightly on the last word, a raw pain surfacing. She offered me a soda. I took it, swallowing the dryness in my throat. "You're telling me they're meeting today?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Likely," she confirmed. "Tom thinks I've stopped checking on him. He's grown careless." We waited, passing the time with anxious conversation. Janet pulled out an accordion folder, thick with documents and photos. Inside were stacks of photos. Claire and Tom entering motels, stepping out of discreet restaurants, once even caught in a passionate kiss in a dimly lit parking garage. She had audio recordings of phone calls, detailed phone logs, credit card statements, enough to bury them both under an avalanche of undeniable proof. My gut twisted looking at the evidence, a sickening confirmation of my worst fears. Yet part of me was grateful. For months, I'd felt a gnawing dread, a phantom pain without proof. Now I had it, and it felt like a hammer blow to the skull. Finally, the screen flickered. The motel door opened. In walked Tom, wearing a golf polo, his expensive watch catching the light. Right behind him was Claire, her hair pinned up, her blouse barely buttoned, a look of desperate anticipation on her face. They kissed like horny teenagers, a raw, unrestrained embrace, staring at each other's clothes as if they couldn't get them off fast enough. Within seconds, they were naked, their bodies entangled. The visuals were disturbingly clear, stark, undeniable. My hands balled into fists, white-knuckled and trembling. The woman I'd loved for half my life, the mother of my children, was there, hooking up with a man I barely knew, a man she had assured me was merely a coworker. I watched for about 2 minutes before I couldn't take it anymore. "I've seen enough," I choked out, my voice raw, broken. Janet's face was pale, drawn, a mirror of my own agony. "Me too," she whispered, her voice barely audible as she killed the feed, plunging the screen back into darkness. "I'll have the PI make a DVD." I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady, to compose myself. "Thank you." We spent the next hour forging a plan, our grief and anger slowly congealing into a steely resolve. Janet would share her evidence. I'd do the same. We wanted divorces that left Claire and Tom not just legally separated, but utterly exposed, ruined, with nothing but regret. If they chose to fight, we had enough ammunition to demolish their reputations and their lives. When the conversation wound down, a strange sense of exhaustion washing over us, Janet offered to show me her koi ponds in the backyard, an unexpected, almost whimsical hobby she clearly loved. Grateful for the distraction, for anything to shift my focus from the horrifying images burned into my mind, I followed her outside. The backyard was a sanctuary, beautifully landscaped with winding stone paths, miniature waterfalls, and 3 different ponds. She had koi of various colors, shimmering reds, whites, golds, each gliding gracefully beneath the water, a silent, colorful ballet. It was surreal to stand there, chatting politely about fish, admiring their serene beauty, while my marriage crumbled around me. But it felt oddly peaceful, a momentary escape from the storm. Janet pointed out the complex pump and filtration systems, and I, drawing on my background in plumbing and mechanical work, found myself relaxing for the first time that day, genuinely engaged in the conversation. Eventually, she walked me out. "I'm sorry this is happening," she said quietly, her hand on the doorframe, her blue eyes filled with a compassionate understanding. "But at least we're not alone, right?" I nodded, a faint, weary smile touching my lips. "We'll handle it." Over the following weeks, as I continued to live under the same roof as Claire, I learned her routine in brutal, intimate detail. I would check her toiletry bag whenever I heard the water running, whenever she was in the shower, oblivious. Each time I found fresh condoms, and each time I kept that safety pin handy, methodically, meticulously poking tiny, unseen holes in them. It became a perverse ritual, a quiet act of defiance, and a grim reminder of her deceit. The strangest part was how Claire carried on, as if nothing was wrong. Except she grew more arrogant, more dismissive, with each passing day. She started accusing me of not appreciating her enough, of being too small-minded, too stuck in our suburban life. I started wondering if she actually relished the thrill of living two lives, the dutiful family woman by day and Tom's passionate mistress whenever she could sneak away. It was a game to her, and I, unknowingly, had become a pawn. I cornered her in the living room one Friday evening after the kids had gone to bed. Claire was watching some inane reality show, not bothering to mute the TV. "Claire," I said calmly, my voice dangerously steady, "we need to talk about your job." She flicked her gaze at me, barely tearing her eyes from the screen. "We've talked about it already. What's your problem?" "I want you to quit Liberty Insurance. I can't stand the environment or Tom Bradley. He's no good for you." I watched her face for a flicker of recognition, a hint of guilt, but saw nothing but annoyance. She let out a derisive snort. "You are obsessed." "Tom's just a co-worker. I'm not quitting my job just because you're insecure." "It's not insecurities. I see how you act around him." She stood, turning off the TV with a dramatic flourish, her eyes blazing. "Adam, you need to grow up. Stop blaming me for your jealousy. I'm not discussing this again. I'm tired of your demands." She brushed past me, heading upstairs, leaving me stewing in my own silent rage, the unsaid words echoing in the sudden quiet. Meanwhile, Janet and I fell into a pattern of exchanging updates, sharing strategies, becoming unlikely allies. My kids, Sarah and Jake, adored her, affectionately calling her the Koi Lady, thrilled whenever they got to see her beautiful fish. Claire never connected the dots, never suspected. On nights Tom and Claire met up, the kids and I would often be at Janet's, enjoying a calm, warm environment, watching movies, building a quiet, genuine friendship. Janet filed for divorce first. Tom, predictably, fought it fiercely, clinging to his reputation, but the evidence was overwhelming. She had photos, recorded phone calls, detailed financial records, even that damning motel room footage. Furious, Tom tried to bury her under legal threats, claiming invasion of privacy, attempting to smear her character. Janet's shrewd lawyer tore him to shreds, exposing his lies and manipulations. Claire, on the other hand, was either completely oblivious or more likely believed herself untouchable, immune to consequences. She never asked about my late nights, never questioned what I was really doing when I left the house. Perhaps guilt had frozen her questions, or maybe she simply didn't care enough to pry. Then, one night, she dropped a bombshell that solidified my resolve. She sat at the kitchen table with a glass of wine, swirling it lazily. "I've been stressed," she began, her voice brittle. "I'm taking some time off, going to visit my sister Nancy for a few days, maybe a week." She sipped, a smug, self-pitying look on her face. "Thought you'd appreciate the break. You're so moody these days." My jaw tightened, my teeth grinding. She sounded condescending, as though she were granting me a great favor by removing herself from my presence. "All right," I forced out, my voice flat. "When are you leaving?" "Tomorrow morning. Nancy has space. I want to clear my head." She gave me a pointed look, daring me to argue. I didn't. Instead, I gritted my teeth, forcing a casual, "Have fun." My mind spun with potential reasons for this sisterly visit. Something deep inside me, a gut instinct sharpened by months of deceit, told me it wasn't for RR. I started poking around. I found a small, crumpled receipt tucked into her purse, hidden beneath old lipstick and loose change. It was from a family planning center. One quick online check, and my worst suspicions soared. She might be planning to get an abortion. The holes I'd poked in her condoms. Did that mean she was pregnant? Pregnant by Tom? I needed to confirm, to remove all doubt. Within a day, I drove to the clinic. Most places would have turned me away when I tried to ask for details about a patient, citing privacy. But the Family Planning Center, perhaps with a different protocol, indicated they could provide information if I could prove I was the spouse. I brazenly marched in, pretended to be clueless but helpful. "Oh, I'm just here to sign that form," I said with an innocent smile. "So we're all on the same page, right? My wife, Claire Taylor, she mentioned she had an appointment." The receptionist, a kind-looking woman, checked her records, then slid a file over for me to sign. "Yes, Mr. Taylor. Friday, 11 o'clock a.m. for Miss Claire Taylor." My blood roared in my ears, a tumultuous symphony of shock, anger, and a chilling, savage triumph. So it was true. She was pregnant. Most likely with Tom's child. All because of the sabotage I'd done, the tiny, almost invisible holes I'd poked. My heart hammered with a complex mix of emotions: shock, pure, unadulterated anger, a strange pang of regret for the life she was about to end, and a perverse, savage triumph that my silent revenge had worked its way into her life in such a devastating manner. She hadn't just cheated, she got knocked up and was about to erase the evidence, to wipe away the consequence of her actions as if it never happened. I left the clinic with a new, grim focus. There would be no peaceful parting, no quiet, amicable split. She wanted to play games, to live a life of deceit. I would play better, and I would expose her. I would ensure she lost everything. I drove 3 agonizing hours to Nancy's house, Claire's sister. Claire had just arrived the night before, thinking she had escaped to safety. Nancy was married to a man named Brad, an ex-construction foreman who was big enough to bench press me. He had a gruff demeanor and a suspicious gaze. The atmosphere was tense the moment I walked in. Claire, still in her vacation mode, glared at me, arms folded across her chest, her face a mask of annoyance. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice sharp. I gave a tight, almost mirthless smile. "Thought I'd visit. Kids are at my parents' place. Figured I'd grab a few days off since you're on vacation too." I watched her face, the slow dawning of panic in her eyes. Nancy flashed a nervous glance at Brad, who tried to plaster on a friendly grin, a weak effort that quickly faded. "Sure, more the merrier," he muttered, clearly uncomfortable. Claire's eyes narrowed, her jaw set, a vein throbbing in her temple. "I didn't invite you." I shrugged, feigning indifference. "I'm here anyway." A few moments of awkward, stifling silence followed. Brad coughed, clearly trying to diffuse the tension. "How about we go fishing tomorrow, Adam? My buddy Jack has a boat. We can get out on the water, crack a few beers, let the ladies relax." I pretended to consider, a small smile playing on my lips. "Sounds fun." But the next morning I refused to go. I stood by the passenger door of Brad's truck, arms crossed, a stubborn, immovable obstacle. Brad got red-faced, his attempts to argue quickly dissolving into frustrated grumbles. I brushed him off. He and Jack finally left without me, fuming inside. Nancy, meanwhile, started making hurried phone calls, her whispers laced with urgency. Claire asked me to leave them alone, to go do something else. "Adam," she barked, her voice edged with desperation. "We have errands." I took my time, deliberately, mockingly. I drank my coffee slowly in the kitchen, ignoring their attempts to shoo me away, relishing their growing frustration. I shut off Claire's phone the moment she wandered out of sight, ignoring the repeated call-waiting beeps from Brad's number. No doubt he was trying to warn them. Nancy whispered furious curses into her own phone, her voice tight with panic. I guessed she was trying to reschedule Claire's procedure, or at least warn the clinic they'd be late. I blocked every chance they had to slip away, subtly, relentlessly. By the time Brad returned, it was mid-afternoon. He looked utterly exasperated, as if he'd been shouting into a dead phone all day. Nancy tore into him for not forcing me onto that boat, her voice shrill with hysteria. Claire hovered nearby, tense and silent, her expression teetering between raw frustration and a palpable, chilling dread. That evening, after a tense, silent supper, I cornered Claire in Nancy's kitchen. The single light overhead cast sharp, unforgiving shadows on her face, highlighting her fear. "Claire," I said calmly, my voice low and menacing, "you're done working for Liberty Insurance. Either quit or I'm filing for divorce." She stared, fury twisting her features, her eyes blazing with indignation. "Shut up! I'm sick of hearing this. I'm not quitting. You can't bully me into that." I took a deep breath, rummaged in the manila folder I'd brought, and pulled out a stack of impeccably prepared divorce papers. I slid them across the worn kitchen table. "Sign them or don't. But if you refuse, if you continue this charade, I'll do it on my own, and it will be far worse for you." She looked at the papers, her jaw dropping in disbelief, her bravado evaporating. Then she snarled, a desperate animalistic sound. "You can't divorce me for not quitting my job. That's not grounds for anything." "Adultery is," I said softly, almost a whisper, pulling out the stack of photos and fanning them across the table, each one a damning piece of evidence. Claire in Tom's arms, exiting motels, half-dressed, kissing in a dark parking garage. Her face drained of color, turning ashen. She snapped, her voice trembling. "You bastard! You've been spying on me!" She tried to snatch the photos, but I grabbed her wrist, my grip firm. "How else was I supposed to get the truth, Claire? You've made a fool of me, of our children, of our entire family." Her lips quivered, her eyes filling with tears, not of remorse, but